Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We begin as always by welcoming our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news. We advise you on what you can do about it. Today's hot topic for discussion is titled, Can Democracy Survive? Can Democracy Survive? I have two valued guests. They're friends that I've known for well over a decade, joining me today for what will no doubt be some thought-provoking conversation. Phil and Elaine Pasquini are California-based award-winning writers and photojournalists. Both are long-standing correspondents with the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs, published by American Education Trust. In fact, this is how we first met years ago, through American Education Trust and this outstanding publication. Just last month, Elaine, and this just came to my attention as I was going through some material online, I discovered that Elaine received a Fairness and Integrity Achievement Award from the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, just last month. Now, this hardworking married couple are globetrotters. If I'm not mistaken, they are joining us today from Paris. I want to welcome them both to the broadcast without any further ado.
Thank you, my brother Mauri. It's good to be with you, man. And we are in Paris.
Yes, it's good to see both of you, and I hope that both of you are well. I mean, it's really something the way that the two of you travel. I mean, you were just home on the West Coast covering No King's Day in your own backyard, and next thing I hear, you're in London, I believe.
Correct.
And then now in Paris. I don't know how you do it, but you do it, and I'm so glad that you do. First, why don't we begin with you, the two of you, sharing with the audience something about your work. You've been engaged in this valuable work for many years. Share with the audience what you do, what it is you do, and why.
Well, we feel like we should be part of the conversation in a rapidly changing world. We both got our starts a long time ago. I became active with civil rights, and then later the war in Vietnam. And one thing, as you know, morphs into another. We seem to be in constant turmoil. And Elaine and I began writing for and working with the Washington Report in
It's about 25 years
25 years ago, yeah.
It was after we first went to Palestine, and just one thing led to another, and started writing about it. And
so we're
writing about it.
We deal with human rights, civil rights, you name it, we'll cover it, you know. So hopefully that part of the conversation that we're involved in will have some positive effect for change for the better. But it's oftentimes, it seems very futile, and we're in very futile times at the moment, as you know, with all the things that are going on and the direction the world is moving in.
Yes.
And the title of your program today is very reflective of great concerns people have all around the world. So, you know, we're hoping to always make a difference, as you are, I know, with your activism and the things that you're involved in as well.
And on a personal note, when did the two of you become this blessed partnership that you are?
1982.
1982.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Indeed, yes, indeed. And it is truly a blessed partnership. I've been so impressed by the work that the two of you have done over the years. Um, Again, the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs and the organization that publishes that magazine. That was the conduit by which we got to know each other.
Yeah, no, that was great.
And since I've known you, you've been doing very important work. In fact, you sent me a photo display from the recent King's rally, I believe, out of California.
It was in San Francisco.
San Francisco.
And it was on the day that, if I remember correctly, Trump had his military parade. The early reports I read, there were approximately 2.5 million people that participated in this in the United States, which my understanding at any rate was that the military parade only drew less than 250,000.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the dynamics in terms of what people are concerned with and what they really want to support. And that was an important demonstration. It was one of the largest demonstrations in San Francisco for some number of years. I had somebody tell me there were 300,000 people, but I think it was probably closer, maybe to 100,000 max. But it was a large crowd and very impressive. People were very emotional, very set on saving our democracy from this massive wave of impudence towards the Constitution and personal rights and so on. So it was a significant occurrence. I know Elaine and I both were very impressed with the outcome.
I'm sorry there weren't more people, but it was,
While the two of you share your thoughts, your observations from that very important demonstration, one of many that was taking place throughout the U.S. Brother Saalakh, let's see the photos from that the two of them took from that demonstration, inshallah ta'ala. And please continue to share your thoughts on it.
Well, this was the beginning of the demonstration when it came into Civic Center Plaza, and there were already about 10,000 people that greeted them when they came. It streamed people down the street for more than an hour and a half as this crowd moved into this space. It was difficult to cover in terms of hearing speakers because there was so much activity and so many people, but it was significant. You could see the flag flying upside down as a sign of distress.
Yes.
And the demand of no kings, which is something everybody believes in. We live in a democracy. And we're trying to overturn fascism in favor of democracy. And that's an issue. I think this says it all. It's the opening preamble of the Constitution, we the people. And sentiments are very strong. You can see the beautiful buildings, City Hall, San Francisco City Hall in the background. Made a wonderful backdrop. This is, words are truer than other ways of saying things. No kings. We got rid of the last one during the revolution. We don't need any more. Here again, the crowd is moving up. This woman has a photograph of Trump with criminal across his face. This time the flag's flying upright. But once again, the theme, no kings, an important part of what people were saying. Caricature. The best thing about large demonstrations really is the street theater that goes on around them. Creativity with signs, people's sentiments. Many of the signs are handwritten, so they're speaking from their heart. Some are produced by other people who they reproduce them and bring them with them. Here, have somebody's sentiment with two upside down flags. A powerful image in terms of what the flag means when it's upside down. Palestinian flag in the background. A number of issues were being supported besides no kings, the issue of Gaza and so on. This really says it all. This is what most people were there for and what they were hoping to embark and impart upon the others. It sounds like speaking to the choir, but really the images when they go out, and this was reproduced around the world in various publications. I think this one's very telling with the especially with the sign up on the right with this guy, not knowing what to think until he's told what to do. And again, comparing what's going on now with Germany in 39 and France in 1789, we don't have money for a parade, or we have money for a parade, but nothing for Medicaid. What are our priorities as a nation, and how do we move forward in a positive way that allows everybody the opportunity that we all have, and that some people are held back from because of economic or racial or political issues? We're seeing everything becoming weaponized. It's important to speak out. If you don't speak out when it happens, it will happen, and then you won't be able to speak out. So these are important things for our nation and for the world.
Absolutely. Right now, a lot of attention, and justifiably so, is on the war that's raging in part of the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf area. Actually, there's two wars being waged. The ongoing genocide in Gaza, which a lot of attention has been diverted from that because of what is happening now in Iran. And then,
Right.
of course, the the Israeli aggression, now backed up by U.S. aggression against Iran. Now, one of the things that really stands out for me is the fact that in so many of these cases, and particularly in the case of Iran, I mean, Iran has not started a war in this modern age. It has not started a war with anyone. And the war that took place between Iran and Iraq back in the day, it was because this was instigated by Saddam Hussein, who at the time was America's man in Baghdad.
Right.
But Iran has not instigated a war in modern times. But look at what is happening to that country now. What are your thoughts on what's happening in the Persian Gulf, and why Donald Trump and a certain portion of his MAGA crowd has decided to go that way?
Well, I've heard him, as Elaine has, and you have, and everyone else, speaking to the war in Ukraine, about he doesn't want to see innocent people die. And according to him, thousands die every day, which is an extrapolation of magnification of the actual facts. And I don't understand, and I still don't understand how you could be worried about people dying in Ukraine, but somehow Gaza gets a pass. That's not important that people die there.
But we know why, because they're not, as white as the people in
They're not Europeans.
Right.
They're not part of European culture, American history, if you will. See the same thing now playing out.
And they're Muslims, and there's so much prejudice against
Right.
Muslims.
I can't say it's my great fear, but I have great trepidation about what's going on, because this can blow itself into something that it's not presently. I don't think the U.S. should be involved. If Israel wants to fight Iran, they should. But by us stepping in, we're causing more problems than need be. We're expanding the size of the war. The spillover will be such that it's going to affect not only the region, but the entire world. I think, with the threats of closing the Gulf of Hormuz, that means oil prices will go astronomically high, which is good for business and bad for people. It will destroy a portion of the economy. The amount of lives, innocent lives that are lost, will increase disproportionately. You can't drop bombs on a city. We see that in Gaza without killing lots of people. You hear the term being used, smart bombs. They're not smart. They kill indiscriminately. I'm just opposed to another war. And Trump's platform, as you know, was not to start any wars. If you remember, George W. Bush said he wasn't going to be engaged in nation building. and then turned right around and started rebuilding Iraq and so on. So we're pouring gasoline on a fire. I would hope that cooler heads would prevail, but by not letting the diplomatic process work its way out, I think was a major miscalculation on everybody's part in this. I don't see anything positive coming out of it. You're not going to destroy the ability to create a bomb if that's what people want to do. And then the question has to be asked, why aren't we bombing North Korea? They have a bomb, and they potentially will shoot something towards the U.S. They've shot rockets over Japan and
Well, they're not
Taiwan.
Muslims, number
Right.
one.
But they had if you remember, there was a warning in Hawaii. Somebody pushed the wrong button in the civil defense office in Honolulu, and it looked like there was an incoming rocket from North Korea a few years ago, and there was massive panic. So is this the kind of world that we want to live in, where we have politicians who, rather than deal with the matters diplomatically, go ahead and just start a war for whatever purposes? I hate to see us engaged in another confrontation like that. I think that's a sentiment shared by a lot of people. I would hope most, but who knows?
I don't know. I think that when it comes to North Korea, that a very important part of the equation is the deterrent factor. I mean,
right.
If North Korea has an atomic weapon, well, that becomes the deterrent from aggressing against that country for
right.
Concern, fear that it might use it.
Right, exactly.
Go ahead.
That was a big deal in the Cold War. That's why we didn't have a war, because we had an enemy that was as powerful as we were, or very close to it. Mm-hmm. And those deterrents were what actually made the difference.
But the other thing is, Trump still has 3.5 years. He might decide to go after North Korea. I mean, he may wake up one morning and say, I'm going to go bomb North Korea. You just have to wait and see.
Yeah, wouldn't that be insane?
Well, yeah.
Israel, its ongoing aggression, throughout the Mideast, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and now Iran, has really posed a great concern for those of us who are justifiably concerned about us moving closer and closer to a third world war. Even within the MAGA crowd, even within his following, there's a split. There are those who have refreshingly for me come out openly to criticize his decision to back up Israel in this this aggression against Iran, and it has created a fissure within the MAGA crowd. What I'm curious to know, especially given the fact that you are now in Europe, what's the talk on the street in Europe, in London and Paris, regarding what's happening right now in the Mideast?
The few times that we've raised the issue with people, some just go, "Oh, it's Trump," and they're not interested.
They're not concerned, I don't think, that about a world war, but
they're more concerned
in the Middle East. They're not as concerned.
They're more concerned with Ukraine because it's here, it's in Europe.
Right.
The few people that I talk to that are empathetic to world issues are not pleased by what has happened. And I can tell you that with the number of things that I've covered in the last few years since Trump first came on the scene, people continually have told me, I voted for him or I supported him, and look what he did. I didn't think he would do this, and I no longer support what he's doing. So there's great miscalculation on people's parts who thought they voted for him because, for example, maybe immigration was a major issue or abortion for them. and understanding his platform in a cursory manner about other issues, but then turn around and understand nothing about what it was about. I covered a demonstration in Washington with over 100,000 vets outside of the Capitol who were upset about the attack on the Veterans Affair with Doge for their attempts at privatizing it and removing half of the people that work there. And a lot of the vets told me, I voted for him, I supported him, I didn't think he would do this to me. I didn't think he would shoot the vets in the foot for what we've given to the nation in terms of our own personal sacrifices. One guy even had a sign that he was stationed in Iraq with Canadian troops, and he didn't see Canadians other than anything than people who lived in another country, who were our allies and friends. And he said he was upset because of this notion that this has to now become the 51st state. So it's not surprising that there's a split in MAGA and that Trump has thrown part of his support away for another cause that he thinks is going to engender him in a different direction with different people. This is all about, as you know, money grab, power grab, a move towards a fascist state. I write for a magazine or an online publication called LA, goodness, I forgot. Progressive. And somebody had an article in there this week about Trump and how he has managed to change the narrative of government into something that it was never intended to be. And I think we need to be very conscious of the fact that the erosion of the Constitution and the removal of our rights, like for the use of troops in Los Angeles with the National Guard, is an attack on our personal freedoms that step beyond the Constitution, and that needs to be challenged. If we don't challenge it, it will move into another dimension. Elaine and I were covering a think tank in Washington where one of the speakers made the very salient point that presidents who violate the Constitution and take on responsibilities that are not presidential never give them up when their predecessor comes into office. They presume that's part of what they're endowed to do, and they continue on with it. And this is a great fear for many people, that as we become less sensitized to our constitutional rights, that they will somehow be overwritten by this new law, and Congress will lose the power that it has. I think the courts right now are the only answer in holding a bulkhead against this attack on our civil and constitutional rights.
But in Europe, I have to say, Israel's not very popular. We haven't met really anybody that supports Israel. And it's interesting because when we were in Europe in September, we would meet a couple of Israelis traveling. Not so much now, we haven't at all. So, but the polls in Europe show that most support is for the Palestinians, which is good.
Yes, indeed. On that note, let's take a break, a commercial break, and come back on the other side, inshallah.
Sure.
Valley's Motor Spares. We supply motor spares and accessories for all makes and models of motor cars, LDVs, bakkies, trucks, and earth-moving equipment. We deliver on time, every time. Please contact us via WhatsApp on 014-592-0925 or call 014-592-0925 or visit 28 Zenderling Street, Rustenburg. Remember the name, Valley's Motor Spares.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
They say breakfast is the most important meal of the day, yet many children go to school hungry because of poverty. Penny Appeal South Africa's Breakfast Club aims to get a warm, hearty meal to underprivileged children so they can spend their day prospering in their schoolwork. Help feed a needy learner for only 5 Rand a day, or 150 Rand a month. Or visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573 to find out how you can donate. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
As temperatures drop and winter grips the country, the less fortunate in South Africa are preparing for the harsh realities that this season brings. Africa Muslims Agency is distributing blankets, clothing, and other essentials to thousands across the country. Sponsor a winter pack for 320 Rand or a blanket for 160 Rand and spread warmth this winter. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Make a conscious choice, sip for change, and support Palestine Drinks Africa. With every can, you help end the genocide and stand in solidarity with Palestine. Choose between our original or sugar-free options available in the case of 24. Every sip is a step towards justice. Every purchase a powerful message of unity and support for the Palestinian cause. Contact 082 888 1440 or 082 7739 556 today and be part of the change. Palestine Drinks Africa. Sip for change. Liberty for everyone.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, the topic for today, can democracy survive? And my guests for today's conversation are Phil and Elaine Pasquini. Getting back to our conversation, what are your thoughts on this topic? The question of can democracy survive? Are the two of you optimistic, given where we are?
I am. I mean, I think it can. I think it will, but it's too bad what's happening now. But
I agree. I think it's a strong democracy to begin with, which makes a big difference. We have a 250-year history, but we're going to have to, in order to survive, have our elected representatives stand up and take a stand for the country and not be concerned with getting reelected and making more money and becoming engrossed in, disproportionate causes that they're being lobbied for, but to look and to put themselves in the position of doing what's best for the country and not themselves, even if that means they need to step down because they're unwilling to do that. I know that's idealistic, but that's what's required if you're going to stave off what appears to be a direct, full-on attack that's being unrepelled. Law firms cave into him, colleges cave into Trump.
But I think after the No Kings rallies, protests, I think that shows a lot. And anything else like really bad that happens with ICE or whatever, I think more people will come out. And the more people that come out, our representatives are eventually going to, I think, do the right thing, or they will get voted out, possibly. So I think, more Americans will come out on the street if things get really too weird.
Two things come to mind. One was when we drove from where we live in California into San Francisco to the protest. There was not a single freeway overpass that wasn't packed with people. I'm talking hundreds of people on each protest on both sides of the overpass. So the traffic going in either direction got to see the same thing, holding up banners and posters and American flags with No King signs and so on. Another one that kind of exemplifies what I'm going to talk about is when we covered a story about the planting of sunflowers in front of the Russian embassy, across the street from the Russian embassy, by activists, so that when people leaving or entering the embassy saw a symbol of Ukraine growing in a field. This has been a cause of issues between the Russians and the people growing the flowers. They've been pulled out and damaged at night and so on. Now, a new person has bought the property and they've put up video cameras, and they said they will prosecute anybody they videotape that they see destroying the flowers. But most importantly was I met two people there. Elaine and I talked to both of them. They both worked for Homeland Security. One person was on furlough of an undetermined amount of time. The other person had been fired outright. The person on furlough had been there for a number of years, or mid-career individual who was cut back and put on furlough through Doge's efforts. And this individual told us that they were having real trepidation about moving back into the department, which they had great love of and enjoyed their job and were doing what they wanted to do. But they didn't know that because the direction Homeland Security was moving in with ICE and various other programs that have been implemented, that they could morally go back to their job and feel as though they were doing something that was positive and affirmative for the country. Now, this gave us great hope, because this is not something that's either reported or talked about. We can speculate all we want, but we don't really know the facts, if you will. So it's those kinds of individuals who make decisions, I think, that are just as important as the people who stand out in the street. You know, for example, there's a notion about Trump being elected or given the Nobel Peace Prize because of what he's done now in Iran and his work that he did in Pakistan with the issue of Kashmir. But I have to ask myself how a person who, through Doge, shuts down the U.S. Institute of Peace, which promotes peace and understanding across various cultures and countries around the world, can then turn around, start a war, and be given a Nobel Peace Prize. It's something, it goes back to Biden, who was sending 2,000-pound bombs to Israel to drop on people, and then was complaining about humanitarian violations because people were hungry. How do you starve people and bomb them and complain that the other side is wrong and that what you're doing is correct? There's a great deal of logic that's gone away from the world and become weaponized and politicized to means that are unbelievable. It's a different world. It's very surrealistic, as I'm sure you know. You agree.
As the boxing promoter Don King would say, only in America.
And you know, he told Trump to keep his hair like it was, you know, because if you have distinctive hair, you would be standing out in the crowd. So
it's something. It's really something. I too am hopeful. I'm hopeful. I maintain my optimism because of all of the pushback we're seeing in the public square, especially among the young.
Right.
I wondered, I'm like you, I'm a child of the 60s. I remember the demonstrations against the Vietnam War.
Exactly.
And, you know, the various other demonstrations connected to the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I wondered as I got older and grayer, I wondered if I would ever see a time like that again. But what we're seeing today reminds me,
right,
the 60s the 60s and early 70s. You know, it's one of the most turbulent and consequential decades in American history.
Right, and you know, this came up. Elaine will buttress me on this, but Bush's war in Iraq, we saw several 100,000 people in San Francisco. Now, this was a different crowd. This was young children, parents, older people our age, and so on. Mm-hmm. That went around for about 6 months, and then it fell to the wayside. And the only people that I've covered for a very long time, a number of years, were people of the 60s generation and some younger people who were progressive, you know. And then now I've seen that shift again, as Elaine will tell you. You know, we're seeing a lot of people not only the old hippies from the 60s and peaceniks and what have you. But younger people have bought into the idea that the future they live in is predicated on what they do now, not
Yes.
later.
Yes.
And they have inherited things from us that we sacrifice ourselves for to enjoy a world that they knew nothing about. Most people today that are younger don't know anything about civil rights per se, unless they're historians or they look at racial issues. But they don't understand how we got to where we are because of what we've already done. There's a missing link. We don't teach that kind of history in school. We don't teach history which causes us to think about and analyze how things occur, I don't believe, at any rate. We teach history which is fact-based and by rote. You know, you repeat something, if you got the right answer to the question, you move on to the next thing without really thinking. But people are now understanding that this is history. We are living in history. History is not something that happened that you weren't a part of. It's where you are and who you are and where you stand up. Many years ago, I saw a sign that said, if this was the Holocaust, whatever you would do now is what you should be doing today, which was very important. And people talk about the Holocaust, and if I was there then, I would do this.
Yeah.
Well, now we have it. What are you going to do? Are you going to be quiet and remain silent, or are you going to speak out? I think Dr. King said very eloquently, if you're not part of causing attention to the matter, then you're complicit in whatever occurs thereafter. That's a paraphrasing of what he said. He said it much more eloquently than I did. But you get the drift, and you know because you were part of all of that.
With all that has been going on of late in our very disturbed world, especially in the Middle East, I'm reminded of two observations. One very historic. George Washington, you know, the father of this country, this political system, in his farewell address to the Union, when he warned his compatriots and those who would follow of the dangers of giving favorite nation status to any nation.
Right.
You know, he spoke about the evils, and he used that term, evils, the evils that would result from according favorite nation status. And when we look at the nation states that have favorite nation status with the United States of America, at the very top of the list is the apartheid Zionist state of Israel. And we see the manifestation of that dark prophecy, the evils that would result. That is one quote that I'm often reminded of. Another quote that I'm reminded of, and I wish I could remember it word for word, it's a powerful quote from J. William Fulbright's book, The Arrogance of Power, where he describes the two Americas. The two Americas. Have you read that book? The Arrogance?
No, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't.
It's a powerful read. And I mean, he wrote that book many years ago. I'm not sure if he had already retired from government, and this was like a retrospective, or if he was in the twilight of his political career. But, he chaired the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee longer than any other senator in U.S. history up to that time. And from that perch, from that very unique perch, he gave what was a very honest assessment of the two Americas, the America that promote around the world and the America that we project onto the world. And but these two, they come to mind for me often, especially in times like this.
Well, that goes to the idea that it's better to lead by example than to lead by the gun.
Yes.
What I see in Washington is this crush. Instantly out of nowhere comes an issue, and it's slammed against the wall and told to put up your hands and keep your mouth shut. This is the way it's going to be. This is not negotiating. And when I hear art of the deal, that couldn't be further from the truth. We're in the position we're in today in Iraq because Donald Trump threw out the nuclear agreement that had been set up with Iran, which was set to go for 5 years, which would have expired right about now with lots of controls and other things going on. It wasn't a perfect deal. Nobody said it was. but it was better than no deal at all. And we have no deal at all right now. And look what has transpired. We have a favored nation that throws a rock through a window and then runs and stands behind us saying, they're trying to destroy us. You need to help us. Why do we need to help you? That's my question. If you want to be part of the solution, you have to be part of the diplomacy. You can't just take military action into your hands to try to solve the world's problems. If you think about it for a moment, if all the bombs that we have dropped on people from World War II forward brought about peace, would we not live in a paradise now?
No question about it.
Yeah.
No question
So
about it.
so what is the end purpose? How are we going to get out of the war? I heard yesterday or today on TV that Trump's design is to destroy the mullahs and see a change in the government in Iraq or Iran. That's Netanyahu's dream about Gaza, but there's been nobody completely destroyed. There's plans for it, of course. So we can't solve things by destroying things. We need to build things intelligently. We saw that with Doge. Just go in and fire people to aggregate large amounts of ethereal money, vapor money. We saved $1 billion. Where is it? How did you save it? Most of these things have been reversed, but we've destroyed everything in our path in the meantime. So we're not really moving forward. We're really moving sideways and backwards, in my view.
But on the issue of Netanyahu, I mean, it's not just Gaza. I mean, he has been saying for decades, all the way back to the late 80s. I just pulled up and shared a piece of video of Netanyahu from, I think it was 1994 or 95, where he was warning then that Iran was on the verge of getting the bomb.
Right.
So, I mean, and you also think about that the general, his name escapes me at the moment, who after he retired, he paid a visit, to the Pentagon to see old friends, and it was brought to his attention that there were these 7 nations that were to be brought down in 5 years. And all but one of those nations have been destabilized. Iran was the only nation on that list that today has not been destabilized. And as we can see, the effort is being made to do just that now.
Right.
It's, we have a military industrial complex that feeds on war.
Oh yeah. It's a big business,
Yes, it's big business. And it's, going back again to a president in history. I think it was it Eisenhower that warned in his farewell address?
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
It's a military industrial complex.
Yeah, and that quote, it's pretty truncated. If you go to his presidential library and boyhood home in Abilene, Kansas, where he and Mamie are buried, there are a number of quotes on the marble around the walls of that area. And he goes into greater depth than just, beware of the military industrial complex. He talks about specifically what those monies that are being expended for this war machine can be utilized for. People's medical and education.
Yeah, he gave the speech. He mentioned it in a speech to the National Education Association in Washington, D.C.
That's where the quote came from.
Yeah.
And so, you hear the quote all the time, but you need to contextualize it in terms of where does the offset of that money go to, and how can it be utilized? I mean, a number of years ago, I was working on a story. It was about the bombing of Gaza and fighting in the West Bank. And there was an Israeli spokesperson who said, things have gotten much better. The economy in the West Bank and Gaza has increased by 4% this year, which is magnificently high. 4%. It's projected to go up again 4% next year. What he failed to mention was in the last 5 years, there had been zero growth, and there was a deficit in terms of viability.
About 20%.
Yeah, it was about 20% below. So making up 4% in 2 years means you're still 16% behind where you were 4 years ago. How is that forward movement and progression? And so these things, when I hear people complaining because when protesters are saying from the river to the sea, and that's interpreted as anti-Semitic, and it means that Jews need to be wiped out in Israel, and it needs to become an Arab nation. I reflect on Netanyahu saying we need to get all the Arabs out of the West Bank and Gaza because this is a part of our land.
Yes.
If it's one person's land and that's okay to say that you should remove everybody, and the other person says exactly the same thing, there's no difference in the speak. It's just semantics once again. So this is what drives me nuts, when you hear these things, which are completely distorted, respective to what they're implying. Yes.
In your work, how often do you get to interface with political leaders? I mean, one of the things that jumps out at me, and I'm sure it is something that is on your mind as well, is the fact that President Trump, it appears, unilaterally made this decision to go to war.
Right.
Without congressional approval.
Right.
Which is, as I understand it, a violation of the Constitution, the separation of powers, and what is supposed to be the process.
Well, he can actually do that. He can actually attack another country. But within 48 hours, he needs to apprise Congress of that. I don't know that he's done that, but certainly Congress watches TV and listens to the radio and reads newspapers, so they're aware of it. I don't know if it's been formally presented to them.
Phil and I talked about this earlier because, people don't realize, yeah, he's breaking the law, but he has 34 felons against him. And, so maybe this is a 35th felon. And then what's going to happen? He's not going to be arrested because the marshals that do that work for him. So, he's just got carte blanche, basically. Yeah, he's breaking the law, doing things illegal, but he's getting away with it because that's just the way it works.
The 1973 War Powers Act says that after he attacks another nation and he's apprised Congress of it within 48 hours, he can continue his campaign for 60 days. But Congress must then approve whether or not to go to war. But what you're saying, and I agree with, is his unilateral decisions. He doesn't, what did he say yesterday about
how many things?
Tulsi Gabbard didn't know anything about
how many things has he done on his own? Has anybody held him to account? No. People complain. Yeah, so what? He's still in the White House making these crazy decisions.
The courts can overturn, and they have overturned some of his executive orders, which he signs with great flair and holds up for photo ops, even though many of them are illegal, and most of them have been overturned. But it's the theatrics of, I liken it to a game show host and reality TV,
his background.
And the more you can get away with, the more you try to get away with,
And then if you can't get away with it, well, you go on to something else, and Americans and the media, their attention span is so short that they won't. Look, what do we hear about Gaza and starving children? Nothing, because they're too concerned about Trump leads them down these things for media that he wants them to report on, and instead of really reporting on what the truth is.
And there's still issues in Yemen and South Sudan and
Somalia,
in Southeast Asia and
all over
Myanmar.
Africa. Yeah.
The world is in terrible turmoil everywhere, but we concentrate, or at least, mainstream media picks up one story a day. They throw everything away in order to over-report on something. This goes back to what I consider a fundamental fault with commercial media, and that is when 24-hour news started, people became overly uninformed on what they were learning about the world, to the point where whatever the propaganda was that was being perpetrated through media, they bought into, and they believed what they were being told. As a side note, as a sort of an interesting and funny story at the same time, a couple of years ago at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., they had a number of works by artists who were debunking American myths. And they had any number of pieces. But the one that struck me the most was that when George Washington was elected president, somebody made, and an artist for this exhibit made a giant head of Washington that was used for an inkwell. And at the time that they were made, and you may be familiar with the story, at the time that they were made, they were filled with black ink, and that a number of Americans believed that George Washington was black. They didn't believe he was white because they had these inkwells. And so you can see how important and how influential visual imagery is besides the written word. I mean, visual imagery, you can close your eyes, but it's still going to be there when you open them. If you don't read something, you have a choice. I always tell people, if you listen to court proceedings and somebody says in there, strike that from the record, the jury heard it. We don't have earlids.
Right.
That's why they do it.
Yeah,
That's why they
exactly.
do it.
And so, 24-hour news really spoiled the narrative because you're bombarded with it constantly. And we know, and in media, all media has an agenda, and all media is going to propagandize their view. And we see that now weaponized with people being told they can't trust any media at all, whether it's alternative media or mainstream media. That's probably good. And schools are beginning to teach media literacy, so that's important too. But we need to be very careful about what we hear and what we think and what we believe.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. And perception is sometimes far more powerful than reality.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes.
Always, almost, yeah.
Yeah. We are winding down in the broadcast. Let's go to take one more short commercial break, and then come back and finish up on the other side. This has been a wonderful conversation. Let's
indeed so
finish it. Yes.
In South Africa, countless numbers of sick patients leave their homes at the crack of dawn to join long queues at clinics and public hospitals, many of them suffering pangs of hunger in addition to the symptoms of disease. The Al-Imdad Foundation's Slice for Life teams deliver sandwiches to these patients at more than 40 hospitals and clinics across the country. Help us to keep on relieving hunger. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Operation Kurbani Maulana Timur will once again be taking a trip abroad for Kurbani. Many people in the villages live well below the poverty line and only eat meat on the days of Eid al-Adha. Support this cause at 2,100 Rand for 7 shares or 300 Rand per share. Contact Maulana Timur, Maulana Sajjad, Maulana Hamad or Maulana Abbad on 011 852 6324 or 072 299 9268 or 082 368 6866 or 072 697 0131 or 073 576 9786. All slaughtering will be supervised by a team of foreign and local ulama. Visit www.operationkurbani.org.za.
Penny Appeal's Education First campaign helps children to get access to quality education.
I'm 14 years old. When I grow up, I'd like to be a scientist.
We believe every child belongs at school,
And we want education, a better education.
learning and dreaming their way to a better future. With your help, we can provide classrooms, desks, stationery packs, and school shoes. Help make these dreams a reality. Visit www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Again, welcome back to today's broadcast. We have two very special and for me, dear guests, Phil and Elaine Pasquini, two award-winning journalists. If you've just joined us, we're in the final minutes of today's broadcast, and our focus is on the question: can democracy survive? A question. President Trump, Donald Trump, is up in age. He's up in age, and he's not in the best of health. There are bets being made, no doubt, as to whether or not he'll be able to survive this second run that he has as president of the United States. Do you, given in the minds of many, the rather sinister forces, that are in the shadows and who are being, kind of directing much of what we're seeing from behind the scenes, the architects of Project 2025 and the rest, there's this question that some folk are raising about whether or not Vice President Vance is a Trojan horse. What are your thoughts on that provocative question?
One thing that you brought up, and I would ask you, where does people from 2025 stand on the Iran thing? Are they for us bombing Iran? Do you know?
From what I've been able to deduce, some of them are.
I thought they were America first, and this doesn't really go with America first.
Yeah, well, we thought that their front runner, their leader was America first, but
right. So are they disillusioned with him at all?
Do you know? From what I've seen, from in fact, the primary architects of Project 2025, I haven't heard anything from them thus far on what Trump is doing now in Iran. I haven't heard anything, but from a number of very prominent supporters of his, they have raised questions. They have expressed their concerns about this decision that Trump has made.
Right.
And in fact, I've heard a couple of them. There's this one well-known comedian in right-wing circles. His name escapes me at the moment, but he came out very, very forcefully before Trump ordered the attack on Iran, when he was, when the question was out there, the possibility was out there that he might do this. He was very forceful.
I don't think there was ever a question that he was going to do this. And someone asked me in London last week, do you think he's going to attack Iran? And I said, don't believe what he tells you. He said, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Well, the minute I heard that, I knew he knew what he was going to do. It's just a matter of time. What was the timing,
Yeah.
And this immediacy, this need for immediacy is dangerous. We've already destroyed the government for the most part because of the immediate need to throw everything out. It's estimated now that 1.65 million people will die this year because of DOGE cutting off funding for USAID and others.
Isn't that something?
I've sent you copies of the articles that I wrote, so what's going on. 333,000 children have died since January 20th with the DOGE reduction in childhood nourishment and starving children in various places. This knee-jerk need to make change right now, immediately, is childish. It's not planned out. It's not thought through. Everybody knows there's waste in government, but how do you eliminate that? You don't do it by burning down the house. You look at what you have and you come up with operational efficiencies. When you throw out all the inspectors general who are the watchdogs for the government and let kids that didn't even graduate from high school come in because they're good with computers, there's something amiss. There's something wrong.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah.
I mean,
there seems to be a deliberate attempt to just completely upturn, everything. And in fact, that brings us in the final minute. In the final minute, I'd like to get your final thought on whatever you would like the viewing audience in the U.S. and South Africa and in other parts of the world to leave with from your perspective. And I would also like to ask you what your thought is on Elon Musk. What are your thoughts on him?
I'll let ladies go first.
Well, Elon Musk's an idiot. I'm glad he's gone. I think that's a good thing. And you can do the rest. I don't know what to say.
Well, I think democracy will survive because we have or had a really strong democracy, as I said earlier, to begin with. But it's going to take work and it's going to take effort. And the complacency that I've seen for many decades of assuming everything is because it's supposed to be that way is not true. It's a delicate balance and it needs to be maintained and people need to be engaged.
The only thing I would say to Americans, you really need to think about who you vote for. I mean, really think it through. Don't be a one issue for a small issue. I mean, yeah, Biden was an idiot. We didn't like stuff he did, but Democrats would not have gotten out of Paris Climate Accord. I mean, look at climate change and other things that you have to have a bigger picture. And you really, I mean, you can't just say, I'm not voting for so-and-so because I'm mad, or, the Muslims for Trump. That my friend Hussam Elouche from CARE, he pleaded with people at the last minute, vote for Kamala Harris. Obviously, we don't like everything about her, but you have to vote for it. You can't vote third party because that's not our system. And you have to really think, and people just don't do that, but I wish they'd be more thoughtful.
Elaine, I'm so glad that we ended on that note, because this is something that I have been arguing for some time now. We all need to be more strategic in how we approach elections and what have you. And what you just said was right on the money.
I want to close with Elon. Just lost 2 rocket ships and $195 billion of value in his company. So if you believe in karma, you can see it's coming back around. He's gone, but his work will not be forgotten. We're going to begin suffering for that, beginning very soon for many months, along with what's been done with tariffs and what have you. People will feel the economics. That's when change will begin to take place, in my view.
Indeed. I want to thank both of you for joining me today. I can't believe I was in the lead up to today's broadcast. I was thinking, is this the first time for them to join me in conversation? And I believe it is. Shame on me. It will not be the last.
Yeah.
It will not be.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us today, and safe travels.
Thank you.
And we end on that note, as we normally do, with a verse from the Quran, a very appropriate verse in these challenging times. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihat. Wa tawassaw bil haqq. Wa tawassaw bis sabr. Which means, in the translation of the meaning, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.